בשם השם נעשה ונצליח, שיעור תורה, ברוכים הבאים. Tonight, B'ezrat Hashem, will be a shiur לרפואה שלמה to רבנית לבנה בת שרה, הרב אפרים בן שולמית, רבנית שרה בת ענת, דוד בן עשריה, דוריס בת ג'ורה, also for דבורה בת מרסדס, אסתר בת ציפורה, סרח בת בתיה, and מתניאל בן אסתר, יפה נקדם בת צורי, קסיה בת שושנה חיה, שמואל חיים בן אלה, אמין בן סבטלנה, צבי משה בן לאה. הקדוש ברוך הוא give them רפואה שלמה, רפואת הנפש, רפואת הגוף, הצלחה בכל מעשי ידיהם בעזרת השם. Okay, so sure, also for Ilui Nishmat of Eliyahu ben Avraham. בעזרת השם. And also for a refuah shlema for the community of New Rochelle, and also in all of Am Yisrael across the world that are suffering right now with this coronavirus crisis. Now, the coronavirus crisis is going to be part of the conversation tonight, a key part of the conversation tonight. But it's not going to be what you've probably heard so far. And the reason why is because we're trying to fix the Chilul Hashem and complete panic, the behavior that's happening in the world that is beyond ridiculous right now, with some information, with some insights. Now, you okay? Oh, I think I just shared it with you. I shared it with somebody. Okay, so the situation right now is dire. And it's going to get much, much worse. That's the bad news. The good news is that it's not going to get worse for the reasons that you think. Now, if you remember, a little over a month and a half ago, I spoke to you guys about what's happening when this whole coronavirus situation came to light, maybe 2 months ago. And we discussed how the stock market will eventually react, and indeed it reacted just like we thought, but this is again just like the beginning. And if you remember also, I told you that I'm not so worried about the virus, I'm worried about how the government reacts to it, because viruses happen. Viruses happen. They've happened since the beginning of time, since HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. There's at some point when Yaakov Avinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bring sickness to the world because there was no indication that someone was going to die. You know, people would just look healthy, act healthy, and then one day they'd say apchi, they'd sneeze and die. And that's why to this day there's a custom to say God bless you, or in Hebrew they say labriut, your health. And the reason why is because almost 5,000 years ago, 4,500 years ago, someone that sneezed died on the spot. Why? Because Yaakov asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu for chesed, for kindness, to at least give the people some indication that they're going to die soon. And thereby they'll be able to prepare themselves and prepare their families for it, by whether it's an inheritance or leadership and so on. Someone dies abruptly, which is unfortunately a good majority of deaths in the world still to this day. People don't usually expect to die even if they're sick. And that's the reason why many of them are not prepared. And when someone dies and the family is not prepared, sometimes there's no will, sometimes there is all types of difficulties that are caused, in partnerships and businesses and so on. So Yaakov Avinu, with Beruach Kodsho and his Benevuato and his prophecy, understood that this is something that's much needed, and of course Hashem liked this idea. Not that Hashem did not know this, but He wanted to give Yaakov the merit for having such such an idea that he brought to the world. Same thing with, for example, with Yitro. Yitro gave Moshe Rabbeinu the idea of having a judicial court, where there's a higher court and a lower court, and he told him, don't judge everyone yourself, have different court systems. Smaller cases here, higher cases here, higher cases there, and eventually the Supreme Court is you. And to this day, the whole judicial court that we use today is based on what Moshe Rabbeinu had. Who had this idea? Yitro. Now what, did Moshe Rabbeinu, that was the smartest human being that ever lived, spoke to HaKadosh Baruch Hu face to face, couldn't come up with this idea? Sure he can, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Yitro as a gift. Yitro, he wanted him to have the merit of having such an idea. Now, the situation today is that you have a government around the world panicking in such a fashion that it is creating a damage much worse than any epidemic we've had in recent years. And the reason why is because they have no God. When you have no God, and that means that you think that you are God. Even if you say, I believe in God, Jew or Gentile, but you are panicking right now, that means you have no God. Why? Because if you knew the God of Israel, you know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing to worry about. As the Chafetz Chaim told us 100 years ago, every bullet has its name. Why? Because the Gemara says it. There's not a single human being in the world that gets pricked on his finger by a needle without there being a din in Shamayim to decide it. Meaning, if someone is meant to die, they're going to die. If they're not meant to die, they're not going to die. No power in the world is going to change that. If you understand the mechanics, the basic level mechanics of how Kadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, what are you panicking for? If you're meant to die, you're meant to die. What you think being worried is going to help you? On the other hand, the Goyim don't have such a thing. They don't have such a thing. Why? Because they're all panicking. And they're panicking in such a way that they're literally shutting down commerce. They're shutting down the business world. And there are entire industries that are being shut down right now, whether it's the restaurants, bars, all types of theaters, which Baruch Hashem, these places should be shut down permanently, many of them, because there's full of znut and garbage there, all types of immorality and so on. But the point is that on the business sense, for a restaurant to survive is a miracle. I was in New York, I spoke to a guy that was a restaurateur. Had a few restaurants, made lots of successes and failures in the restaurant business, and he told me in New York there are literally more restaurants, New York City, there are more restaurants in New York than if you went for breakfast, lunch, and dinner to a different restaurant every single day. For an entire year, you still wouldn't go to all the restaurants. That's how many restaurants there are. Now, the problem is that most restaurants don't survive their first year. First year in business, most restaurants don't survive. They go out of business. That's why real estate companies, companies that own buildings, the worst tenant in the world is a restaurant. They never want restaurants. Why? Because very likely that whatever lease you sign, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, most likely you're not going to survive the lease. Which means that the landlord is stuck with a absent, no tenant, and sometimes they don't pay the last several months, and so on and so forth. It's a really, really bad tenant. The best tenants are usually banks. But the point is, Rabotai, is that for a restaurant is like a blue-collar worker. if he doesn't make money this month, most likely he's going to have to declare bankruptcy. Why? Because people live above their means and they don't have much savings. At best they have, let's say, 1, 2, 3 months max saved, and that's it. Then then they start going to family, friends, and so on and so forth to borrow some money. Restaurants are even worse. Restaurants literally live by the day sometimes. Even if they're big famous restaurants that are making, tens, 20s, hundreds of thousands of dollars by the week, it doesn't make a difference. The expenses are very, very high, and the reality is that these restaurants depend on specific days of the week and so on. So for a restaurant to simply shut down for a month, it's not like a regular business. If let's say you're selling cars, or you're selling houses, or you're selling software, and you close down for a month. Usually it's a very different type of business. Same thing goes with a lot of these industries in America. A lot of these mom and pop shops, small businesses, whether it's a small pharmacy store or it's a store that sells all types of other types of tchotchkes. These businesses cannot survive not being in business, because nobody prepares for a complete shutdown in 24 hours. So what's happening right now, Rabotai Karim, is a effect on the economy that is going to be impossible to fix. All you can do is hope that more survive than not. More survive than not, because simply the longer they keep corporate America and the world on shutdown, the bigger the impact is going to be, the more difficult it's going to be to fix. Without some type of major, unusual, once-in-a-lifetime government intervention, where pretty much the government starts writing checks to businesses that are big checks, which is not happening. Somebody said yesterday, I think it was they're considering giving a economic stimulus in America. Trump is going to give every family $1,000. Now this may sound like, wow, great, yeah, I want $1,000. I want $1,000. Yeah, sure, $1,000. What are you going to do with $1,000? Can't pay rent with $1,000 today. Rent you can't pay with $1,000. What are you going to do with $1,000? Who survives on $1,000? In America? Almost nobody. The reality is that there's a few very, very small minority of people that survive on such little amount of money. The vast majority of people are living much, much higher level than that. They have rent or mortgage payments that are $1,500, $2,500, $3,000 a month, $4,000 a month. $1,000 is maybe their week shopping for food. And that's a reality. Which means that even though it sounds like a big number, $1,000 times 400 million people, ooh, wow, that's a lot of money. They're not going to do it anyway. But the point is that let's say they do it, it's not going to do anything anyway. It's just a complete waste of money. Complete waste of money. It would have to be tens of thousands of dollars, which is not possible. So, the longer people don't go to work, the more the damage is going to be for corporate America, for the average Joe, and even eventually for the big companies. Because the big companies need the average Joes. The vast majority of the money that's made by corporate America is made by average people, not by multimillionaires. People think that multimillionaires are the best customers. They're usually not, actually. It's the guys, the average people that barely make a living, that are the best shoppers. So now that they're shutting down corporate America, this obviously had an initial shock on the stock market, where the market already dropped 30%. Since we've spoken about the market's going to drop, it's already dropped 30%. Baruch Hashem, one of my students, actually smart enough not only to listen to the Torah, but also listen to the business advice we gave indirectly, and he sold out his retirement account. Now, he told me that I don't know what people buy or sell, or I don't know what people do with their personal life, but he told me, listen, you saved me a ton of money. Said there was a day last week, the market dropped almost 15% in one day. So when you have $500,000, $1 million, $2 million in the stock market, and you just saved yourself 30%, you're talking about big money. You're talking about huge money. So anyone that has a portfolio today that could reverse time and could have sold a month ago, they'd be happier than anything in the world. Why? Because right now it's more difficult to sell. Why? Because you still have maybe a little bit of profits if you're invested a few years ago, and you don't really want to sell because you think it's going to rebound, and that's what happens. That's the monster. Now, for anyone that wants to know, I'm not going to talk necessarily so much about the stock market, but I'll tell you this in short. If the government reaction continues the way it is right now, which it looks like it will, and the measures that they're taking are going to continue being what they are or worse, where they're simply going to continue putting curfews in different neighborhoods, shutting down certain industries, certain streets, in hopes that this thing goes away in a month or 2 months or 3 months or whatever it is, then what you've seen in the economy and the market in the last month is a little pussycat in comparison to what's coming in the next couple of months. You're going to see the market drop to levels we haven't seen in decades. And there's a few reasons for it. Number one, as soon as people realize there's no light at the end of the tunnel, they're going to expect earnings reports in about a month from now. Companies going to have to report their earnings, but during earnings, no one really cares about what happened in the last 3 months. Everyone's going to care about what's going to happen in the next 3 months. And if nobody knows when business is going to go back to normal, that means that the projections of every single company are going to be 50, 60, 70% less than what they were expecting to start off this year. So you're talking about a market plummeting to levels that we haven't seen in decades. Worse yet, there are, as I told you briefly, there are hidden monsters within the market and the way it's structured today. One of them is called ETFs, exchange traded funds. Now these ETFs make the market too liquid, overly liquid, to the extent where people can buy and sell baskets of stocks intraday. The problem is that many of these ETFs have something called an illiquid assets. They have all types of bonds and debt vehicles where they buy them with an expectation of holding on to them for years, because you can't sell these things easily. Now, the owners of these ETFs have no idea this is actually happening. They have no idea that these things are illiquid. Why? Because they can buy and sell their stock. But that means that once these people want to start getting out of the market, they're going to start selling these ETFs. These ETF companies are going to have to liquidate these illiquid assets at sellout prices. Meaning, if it's priced at 100, they're going to have to sell it at 20. Because it's illiquid, it's hard to sell anyway. Which means you're going to see certain things drop 60, 70, 80% in one trade. Now, I told somebody that knows a little bit about the market that I believe that the market can drop 50% in a week. That was a month ago. I wasn't so off. It took a little longer than a week. But the way things look, it could happen tomorrow. But that's again, assuming the government continues doing the foolish things that they're doing right now. Now you're going to say, wait a minute, hold on a second. Now all these other rabbis, all of these communities, they're all worried. What do you think? We should all go outside? I'm not necessarily against it. And I'll tell you why. You see, the Ramban writes here in the Iggeret HaRamban, of course we have to connect it to the shiur. Would you guys think I'm going to give you an economy session? The Ramban says here in the Iggeret HaRamban over 800 years ago, in a letter that you could evaluate, study this letter from here until the end of the world and you won't finish. The way that the Rishonim, the sages of 800 years ago, the way they thought was something that is beyond human if you compare it to anyone today. Anyone that studied the Rishonim, which is Rambam, Rashi, Ramban and so on, versus the Achronim, let's say the Gaon Mivilna or Rav Ovadia was, let's say, the last of the Achronim. Now, anyone that studied the two, you will see that the language that the Rishonim used was much clearer than the language that the most recent sages used. Meaning, for the Rambam to say his thought, what the halakha is and why, took 1, 2, 3 sentences. Whereas the sages of now, or in the previous, let's say 100, 200 years, to say the same thought could have taken them a whole book. We'll talk about 500, 1,000 pages. Same thought. Explain what the Rambam wrote 800 years ago, a whole book, 2 books, 3 books. Someone asked, how come the Rishonim could just give you the whole idea in a few sentences, but to actually understand it today takes a whole book, 2 books, 3 books, sometimes a whole library? What is this like? This is like comparing Torah Moshe, the 5 books of Moses, versus the prophets. Isaiah, Yechezkel, Micha, all of these prophets that we have after. You see Torah Moshe, you can understand what's going on relatively easily. With an English translation, with a Hebrew, if you understand Sfat HaKodesh, or any other language, you can pretty much understand at least the basics of what's going on. Not necessarily the hidden details in it, but the basics of what's going on you can understand by simply reading the pshat, the basic meaning of the 5 books of Moses. But if you go to the prophets, you go to Isaiah, Yechezkel, you go to Zechariah, you have no idea what's going on. Everything is in parables and analogies, sophisticated language, which is, by the way, a very interesting side note on this. The Christians that fight the Torah, they always fight the Oral Torah. They always fight the Oral Torah. They don't fight the written Torah. They say the 5 books of Moses, the Tanakh, is all good. But the written Torah is considered the 5 books of Moses. But the Christians consider the rest of it also considered the written Torah, and they say it's all valid. The problem is, for them, is that they're so foolish that they don't realize that they're contradicting themselves with this. And the reason why is because the original Christians believed in the Oral Torah. The Christians from 2,000 years ago believed in the Oral Torah. The Christians from even 800 years ago, at the time the Ramban had the whole debate in Barcelona. What was the whole argument? The whole argument was that this kofel, that was a Jew really, but became a Christian, was trying to prove that Yoshke actually is in the written Torah, it's part of the Oral Torah, it's all good, he's in there. He tried to prove Yoshke through the Oral Torah, not the written Torah. So only the Christians of today say that the Oral Torah is not valid. What's the problem? Why did the original ones not do this? Because the original ones were much smarter than the ones of today. Why? They understood that without the Oral Torah, it's not just that there's no Judaism. Without the Oral Torah, there's no Christianity either. And the reason why is because the Oral Torah is the sages of the Oral Torah are the ones that decided and decreed that the rest of the Tanakh, meaning all of the other 19 books, aside from the 5 books of Moses, are holy. Meaning, originally it was just the 5 books of Moses. But then there was the prophets, but they weren't part of the 5 books of Moses. The sages of the Gemara decided that these are also holy, and they're all written with the divine intervention, and so on. Now, why is this critical for the Christians? Because all of their so-called proofs for Yoshke come from where? From the prophets. So they're referring to every time they mention something to somebody to recruit them for their Christianity idol worship, what are they saying? Look at Isaiah 53, look at Daniel 9. They're relying on the prophets. But who gave the prophets the validity? Gemara Masechet Megillah says we had 1.2 million prophets throughout history, but only 55 of them are mentioned in the Tanakh, which means that everything that they wrote is for all generations. Hence, meaning that the 5 books of Moses, as well as the other 19 books, the prophets, are divine. So, without the Oral Torah saying this, in Gemara Masechet Megillah and other places, you can't use Isaiah as a source for anything. You can't use Zechariah or Proverbs or Ecclesiastes or anything else. But that's what happens when you don't learn Torah and people don't know anything, and so they end up debating with these fools that don't have a debate. Now, the key is to understand is that our Torah, Rabotai Yikarim, has everything in it, including the coronavirus, including what's happening in the market, including what's going to happen at the end of the days, including what's happened before and what's going to happen after. And our Holy Torah tells us that when you have people that have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they have nothing to worry about. Aboteach be'Hashem chesed yesovevenu. Someone that has confidence in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing, only kindness will surround him. Now, when the Ramban, Rashi, and other sages delivered these messages, explained these messages, it's very simple for them to understand the halakha from it, and the law from these statements that are in the Torah. When Moshe Rabbeinu said it to Am Yisrael, it was very easy, very clear. Prophets, different. Why? Level of prophecy was different. What's the difference between the Rishonim and today's sages, or the sages of the last couple hundred years? One Chacham said it best. He said, when someone is walking in darkness, looking for a light switch, what does he do? Tries to touch everything. Why? He doesn't know where everything, he doesn't know, it's dark. He doesn't know where anything is. So he just tries to touch everything, the wall, this, that, the ceiling, just to find a switch. When someone walks and the light's already on, and he wants to turn it off, he just goes directly to it. That's the difference. The difference between Moshe Rabbeinu versus the rest of the prophets is for Moshe Rabbeinu, the light was on. Not that the other prophets were not good, chas v'shalom, or anything like that, but in comparison, there's no comparison. Similar comparison between the sages of 900 years ago versus the rabbis of 200 years ago. Needless to say, the rabbis of today, no matter how great they are. So the Ramban, when he wrote this, he wasn't suggesting it. He was simply telling you that this is a law of life, according to the Torah. And in this letter from 800 years ago, he told us about staying away from anger, staying away from ego, controlling your behavior. But now he tells us even more so. He says something that sounds simple. He says something that sounds to the average person like, what's the big deal? But when you study the words, you'll understand Be'ezrat Hashem. The Ramban writes, "V'chashov adibur kodem shototzienu mepicha." Ponder your words before you utter them. Think about what you're going to say before you say it. Surely you've heard this before from your teachers, from your parents, from your spouses, from associates and so on. But they were telling you as maybe a one-time suggestion because maybe you said something off. The Ramban is telling you, this is, if you want Gan Eden, this has to be all the time. Before you say anything, think about it first. What impact is what you're going to say going to have on the other party, on yourself, on the other people listening? Don't just speak out with emotions of anger, of sadness, of excitement. Think about what you're going to say. Why? It's going to carry a lot of weight. In fact, not only think about what you're going to say, think about whether you should even say anything at all. Now, the truth is that when you look at this, it sounds like not such a big deal. But then you go and you see, what did the Ramban base this on? What kind of knowledge did he base this on? Surely he knew the entire Torah Kula. What did he base it on? If you look at Proverbs, chapter 18, verse number 21. Shlomo HaMelech says, Mavet v'chaim biyad halashon. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. This means literally, what you say can determine whether you're going to live or die. Now sometimes you say, wait a minute, what am I just saying? I'm just telling her I don't want this food. I'm just telling her I don't want this. I'm just telling her I want this. I'm just telling her this. People think I'm just. Everything is I'm just. Until they realize it's usually not I'm just. Because to you, you were just doing whatever it is. You were saying just whatever it is. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't take it that way. You may treat it that way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't treat it that way. He tells us, Rabotai Yekarim, that there's a lot more to speech than we know. First and foremost, the Sefer Doresh Tov by Rabbi Ephraim, our own dear Rabbi Ephraim Kachlon, brings in Parashat Beshalach, brings a few key items a person needs to know about speech. The Gemara in Masechet Yoma, in page 19, Amud Bet, 19b, Amar Rava, Asach Sichat Chulin, over Be'aseh Shenemar V'dibarta Bam. Bam velo bedvarim acherim. Rava, one of the greatest sages that ever lived, you'll see him almost on every page of Gemara, says the following. He says, someone that speaks mundane talk, unnecessary talk. Not, oh listen, I want to eat something. You want to eat something? Okay, let's get something. That's, you need to eat. Fine, no problem. Or, you want to buy this, I want to sell this. That's business talk, you need to talk business. We're not talking about that. Or sometimes your wife or your husband needs a little extra attention, so you have a little conversation with them. That's fine too. Or your kids need a little attention, they need some love, you need to talk to them, make them laugh a little bit. No, that's okay too. We're talking about simply nonsense, nothing. Just have nothing to do. You go to a coffee shop and just shoot shop. You just want to talk about sports. You want to talk about the stock market. You want to talk about coronavirus. You want to talk about toilet paper. All types of things that have no purpose whatsoever. They serve no purpose in the world. The conversation serves no purpose. The words serve no purpose whatsoever, which all of us are guilty of. You want to do that. Rava says it's a sin. It's not only a bad idea. It's a sin from the Torah. Why is sin from the Torah? It says in the psukim that we say every single day as Jews, when you say Shema Yisrael, say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? After that you read a few paragraphs. Now in those paragraphs it says that you have to teach your children Torah and you have to speak these words, V'dibarta bam. So Rava says from this specific two words we learn one of the 613 commandments. What? V'dibarta bam, bam velo bedvarim acherim. Bam is referring to divrei Torah. These words that we're referring to, that you're supposed to be speaking, have to have either a classification of being Torah or something that's necessary for life. That's what you're allowed to talk. Business, marriage, children, education, no problem. Torah, obviously. Everything else, you're doing it, sin. Already, 90% of most of our speeches are gone. Most of our conversations with people, people talk to people about absolutely nothing. Now, the danger here is not just what happens in let's say after a person after 120 or after coronavirus, whatever it is, gets up to Shamayim. It's not just that. You see, Rabbi Ephraim continues and he brings something from the Ma'archu. Rabbi Chaim Vital in Sefer, this is actually worded by the Chida, who brings the Rabbi Chaim Vital in Sefer Nachal Kdumim, Parashat Chukat, Ot Bet. And he says, Adibur hu chelek me'aneshama. The speaking is part of the soul. Your ability to speak is one of the unique things that makes you a human being versus an animal. And it's a key part that you have in your neshama that doesn't exist in other creatures. V'kol dibur mafsid dvar ma me'aneshama. And every bit of speech takes away a piece of the neshama. ופירוש דבריו שאדם שירבה בשיחה בטלה ממעט את שנות חייו. Meaning, the Chidah says, what's the Rabbi Chaim trying to tell us here? Someone that speaks a lot of nonsense is simply cutting the years out of his life. Hashem Yishmo. In the Kuntres, Mizav Mipaz, the Malchu says even more. He says the Kol Adam, every person has a certain amount of words that are in his bank, if you will. And there's a great danger. Yes, sakana she'arbebo. There's a very big danger that he'll spend too much of his speech. Kevan she'achol ligrom bekach mita le'atzmo. Chas v'shalom, he says. Because if he speaks or she speaks too much, she could simply cut her own life. She could bring death early to herself, more than what she was supposed to. Even though Hashem, let's say for example, decided to give her 100 years in this world, but she likes to, talk about all types of nothings. Coffee with this one, coffee with that one, tea with this one. Oh, you didn't have tea, let's have another tea, and let's go to the mall, and let's go to the shop, and let's talk about this, and we'll talk about Corona, we'll talk about Barona, we'll talk so much, she dies at 60, Shem Yishmo. Yeah, but she was supposed to live to 100, Hashem. Yeah, she was. Well, it's not my fault that she spent 100 years worth of work in 60 years. She lived over a budget. Now, Shlomo HaMelech says the source that the Malchu, the Rabbi Chaim Vital, uses. Where did he get this from? He says, Shene'emar nafshi yatsa bedabro. In Song of Songs, chapter 5, verse number 6, Shlomo HaMelech says, my soul departed at his decree. The second that he heard Hashem's words, his decrees, his soul almost came out. And the Malchus says, this is the hint. This is where we learn the secret. We learn the secret that a person's life is in his dvarim, in his words. Every word that comes out of his mouth. Now what about if it's divrei Torah? Divrei Torah you could speak from here until the end of the millennia. Why? Because that adds to your neshama. But divrei chol, mundane talk that's not necessary, problematic. This connects to the Corona in a moment, you'll see. Now, Rabbi Ephraim continues and he says here, we see from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 57, verse number 19, Borei niv sfatayim, that Hashem says, I created speech of his lips. Now niv is where the word nevuah, prophecy, or prophets, nevi'im, come from the word niv. Niv is to speak. That's why speakers that speak the truth are also considered prophets in essence. Even though there's no prophecy, no one is talking to God and God talking to him back, like the times of Moshe Rabbeinu or the other prophets from 2,500 years ago. But when you speak divrei emet, it's like being a prophet. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I created speech of his lips. Niv sfatayim, borei niv sfatayim. God is the one that created niv sfatayim. And here is where Hashem tells us that at the moment that He created Adam HaRishon, He already put His own life in his lips. Meaning the speech that came out of his mouth was connected to his life. And also you'll notice that the word Niv itself is 3 letters, Nun, Yud, Bet, which also matches what Shlomo HaMelech says. Niv, Nun stands for Nafshi, Yud is Yatz'ah, Bet is Bedavro, which is, Niv is connected to the speech being connected to life itself. So, here we see that a person has to think twice before they say things. Has to think 1,000 times before they say things. Unfortunately, this is simply not happening right now. Every few minutes, there's a new video by some other yo-yo coming out, telling people about what his feelings are or her feelings are about what's happening in the world today, either on television or on other forms of media, these WhatsApps and Facebooks and so on, and in essence just creating more havoc than necessary. Now, if the Goyim come out with speeches, whether it's Donald Trump or his associates or some newscaster from CNN or Fox or any of these medias, that's in essence their life. If they don't speak, they're in essence considered dead anyway. Because these people, they live to speak. They just like to hear themselves talk. Whether it's a lie or true is irrelevant. They just need to talk. They need to hear themselves talk, and the world needs to hear them talk also, because the world doesn't know what else to do. They don't have a Torah. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to the disappointment, the awful, awful disappointment in the Jewish world. And specifically the religious Jewish world. Where you have simply the leaders of today acting worse than many of the followers. Panicking in such dramatic ways as if we do not have a God. You have these rabbis that are either giving speeches or they're writing these letters telling the people, oh no, this is horrible, it's the end, we have to all stay home, take care of your life. One guy sent a message, I don't think he's a rabbi, but he sent a message which went, of course, the Yetzirah makes sure these things go viral. The stupider the message, surely it's going to go viral. This guy started crying. Religious Jewish guy, started crying on a video. It's sakanat nefashot. Please stay home. Where's Hashem? Where's Hashem in your life? Where's Hashem in your life? Where is Hashem in your life? Where is Hashem? Where is this panic come from? Where in the Torah did it tell you they're allowed to panic like this? Worse yet, send people. You want to panic yourself? You want to smash your head against the wall 500 times until Corona comes or your head explodes? Go ahead, do whatever you want. It's your life. But once you go public, you cannot give such a message to the public. Create panic in people, suffering for no reason. The guy starts crying. Other people, all types of things. Oh, we're closing down the community. There's no shul. There's no prayer. There's no nothing. Hashem yishmo v'yatzil for such leaders. What do you think is going to save us? The medicine? Or maybe it's Dani from the White House. What do you think is going to save us? You think medicine is going to save us? Logistically speaking, it's impossible anyway. Even if all of us just stop the shiur right now, chas v'shalom, and we decide we're all scientists. We'll get some medicals and some type of stuff from CVS, maybe it's still open, make some stuff together, okay, we got a new medicine. We're going to bring it to the government because Sonny's a genius. I'm sure he can figure out a medicine. Joshua is creative. He come up with something, medicine that looks pretty cool also. And next thing you know, we have medicine, maybe with some music to it also. Next thing you know, we got a medicine. Now, we bring it to the White House, Mr. Trump and associates, we got ourselves a medicine. Now, let's say we have a medicine, right? We got the cure. Guess what? You have to try it out. Trial takes 3 to 6 months. Oh, you think he's going to prove it because Sonny said it's good? Don't trust Sonny. Even though Sonny's a good-looking guy and he studies Gemara, he's going to finish the entire Shassu very soon. But the reality is they still can't trust his words. Why? There are billions of people that are waiting for this. They just can send it to the market. Minimum. If you stop all commerce, it's going to take 3 to 6 months to test this thing. Now, after 3 to 6 months, let's say we discovered it. This is it. We're all going to be billionaires, let's say. Okay? Oh, they're probably not going to pay us anyway. But anyway, let's say we got it. We got the medicine, 6 months into it, right? Guess what? You got to produce this stuff. Mass production takes a long time. We're not talking about producing 1 million vials of it. We're talking about billions. Just to hit the local American market is going to take no less than 1.5 years. And that's just America. Forget the rest of the world. Forget medicine. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can take us out of this dump that we're in. For people to act crazy like they are right now is not helping it either, though. Now the question is, do we really need medicine? Which we're going to get to in a moment. If everyone is dying on the streets like the videos, then the guy should be crying. I should be crying with him. You guys should be crying. If he thought about what he said, and the other yo-yos that come up with all types of nonsense thought about what they said, then we should all be crying. One foolish woman came out and said, hey, listen, my friend that works for Donald Trump, he said that starting tomorrow is going to be national shutdown. Everyone is locked in their houses. First of all, Rabotai, listen, I'm going to tell you a little secret. My whole life, in the business world, almost 2 decades, I dealt with some of the richest people in the world. And I know one rule. Anyone that drops names is a liar. People that know people don't drop names. They don't say, I know such and such that works for Donald Trump. People that actually know people don't tell people they know people. Anytime you hear a speech where someone says, or some friend, new associate, new customer, anyone says, oh yeah, I'm friends with Donald Trump. Yeah, I got a relationship at the White House. Yeah, my friend's an FBI. Oh, my friend is the mayor over here. That person's a liar. Where everything else that he says is unreliable. Why? He's trying to impress you too much. Now, this woman was trying to impress the world with her scary message. Why? She wanted to tell everybody to pretty much just go crazy, go insane after we watched the other message of the guy crying. Now she's helping us by telling us that tomorrow it's going to be a concentration camp. Because she has a friend that works for Donald Trump. Life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. People that drop names are liars. Never believe them. Funny thing is, the guy she apparently knows actually made another recording a little while later. Says, by the way, I'm the guy she talked about. I don't work for Donald Trump. Meaning, not only is she an idiot for making this message, but she's a liar too. And the internet is full of these things. Full of them. Other people are making all types of holograms in the back screens, like sometimes we make in our own movies. You know, of a bunch of Chinese people sitting over there saying, "Wow, wow, wow." They may be looking at a whale jumping, but the TGI in the background makes it look like there's angels in the clouds and all types of scary creatures. Like anyone that believes this stuff should put himself in a mental institution. And then there's just people that believe and they start doing a voiceover. Oh, guys, this is live. I'm telling you, look, they can't fake it. There's 400 people watching. It must be real. And people buy into this shtuyot. Where is your God, Ribono Shel Olam? Where is your God? Anyone that knows about HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows all of this stuff is nonsense. It's not in the power of Donald Trump or the people that work for him or the people that think they work for him or the people that know the people that may or may not work for him. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that runs the world. No one else. He does not need our help. Don't listen to fools like Manis Friedman that says God needs us. God does not need us. So now the question is, should we be scared? Answer is yes and no. Yes, we should be scared, but not from Corona. We have the right amount of fear, but we're worried about the wrong thing. Why? If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that brought us this coronavirus, which surely He is, just like He brought everything else before, and He will bring everything after, including the Mashiach, then surely He has a plan. And the plan is, Rabotai, is to cause Am Israel to do Teshuva. Our sages teach us that nothing in the world happens without it being connected to Am Israel. Whether it's a tsunami in India, or an earthquake in Japan, or a scary virus with no cure all over the world. It's all for the sake of Am Yisrael. So, just like all of the prophets gave us a message to do tshuva, in essence, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing. But at the same token, we're all scared like it's the end of the world. Why are we all scared because it's the end of the world? Two reasons. Number one, it's a curse in the Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says when we do not do what He says that we're supposed to do, where instead of keeping Shabbat, we drive on Shabbat. Instead of keeping kashrut, we go eat anywhere, whether it has or it doesn't have kashrut. Instead of going to have a kosher bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, or wedding, we have these mixed dancing parties that are not only a Gilui Arayot fest, but also a Chilul Hashem, because sometimes you'll see some religious people attending these places. Instead of learning Torah, we learn the salary cap of every sports team in the NBA, NFL, and MLB. We know how much Messi makes every single year and how many goals he scored last year, but what Rava is and who he is, Bichlal, we have no idea. We just heard the name one time in a lecture. So part of the reason is HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us this because we don't listen to His commandments. It's a curse in the Torah. Parashat Bechukotai, Parashat Kitavo specifically says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to scare you and you're going to be scared of nothing. Now how do we know this is nothing? Because of Chasdei Hashem. Because of the kindness of Hashem. Now for me to just tell you guys, this is the kindness of Hashem, coronavirus is actually a kindness from Hashem, is not enough for you. How do I know? People want sources. 500 times a day people ask me, you mentioned this in the lecture, can you give me a source? Can you give me a source? Can you give me a source? Why, it's not enough that I said it, you have to have a source? No problem, I told you guys to get sources, so I'll give you sources. I'm not going to come unprepared for you guys. Now, there are sources that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us, but that you don't need me to give you sources. Almost every lecture by every rabbi is about how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. I'm going to give you some sources from reality, from what the world we've lived in. Now, epidemics, pandemics, viruses, and so on have been around since the beginning. Now, we have to compare where we're at versus what's already happened. The cholera outbreak, which also happened in the time of the Chazon Ish. The Rabbi Akiva Iger, and also the Chazon Ish, killed 1 million people. 1 million people died from cholera. The Spanish flu, about 100 years ago, killed 50 million people. 50 million. At that time, there was about 2 billion people in the world. Today, there's 8 billion. So 50 million is a decent number. It's 2.5% of the population. Today, it's not even 1%. 500 years ago, there was something called smallpox. Killed 56 million people. There was also a plague called the Justinian, 1500 years ago, estimated to kill about 50 million people. Hong Kong flu, 50 years ago, 1 million people died. Asian flu, 70 years ago, 1.1 million people died. The Russian flu, 1 million people died. Spanish flu, 40 to 50 million people died. AIDS, HIV/AIDS, which is still on to this day because of homosexuality and promiscuity. Till date, it's killed about 35 million people, which is approximately half of the people that have it. Most people think that everyone that has HIV, they die instantly. It's not true. People live with HIV. Many of them, half of them live. Obviously, their life has to be adjusted, but nonetheless, they live. One perfect example is this guy, Irvin, what's it called? Magic Jackson, what's his name? Magic Johnson, the basketball player. Basketball player that was with a prostitute, ruined his life, ruined his career, ruined his marriage, but nonetheless, he's still alive 30 years later. Became a multi-billionaire. All types of restaurants and so on. But point is, he's still alive with the virus. Now, the worst one that we have on record is the Black Plague. 700 years ago, 200 million people died. So I'm not mentioning to you all the plagues that have happened, obviously. That would take pretty much a whole hour. But the point is, I'm mentioning the biggest ones that I have in front of me here. The ones that you've heard of, like AIDS, 35 million people died. Okay? Black Plague, maybe you heard it in history class, 200 million people died. It's a lot of people. Died. Not got the virus, died. Okay. Today, Rabotai Karim, there's a website that I follow that has the exact, hour-to-hour statistics, maybe even more, of what's reported. How many people got this coronavirus and how many people died. The last I checked it, which was right before I left the house, less than 200,000 people in the world of 8 billion people got the virus. Are confirmed cases that have the virus. Not died. 200,000 people got the virus, confirmed cases. Okay? Out of the 200,000 people, only 7,000 people actually died. Now, with all due respect and sadness for the families that lost their loved ones, the reality is 7,000 people versus 200 million, 50 million, 40 million, 30 million, 40 million, 1 million, 2 million. What's the panic? Now, if that's not enough, we have to also know a little bit of numbers about, statistics about the world we live in, because everybody lives apparently in La La Land, where they think no one dies. Right now, according to a study that was done in 2017, so it's not too old, 57 million people die every single year from all types of things. Viruses, car accidents, natural death. 57 million people. You're talking about a couple of 100,000 people die every single day. Just because God said it's finished. Done. Everyone is buying enough toilet paper to build buildings. They're killing each other over a piece of meat. And they're simply crying out to each other as if it's the end of the world because 7,000 people died and 200,000 people got infected, of which almost half are cured already. Over 80,000 people are cured. Now, you have to understand, if when you have a world of 8 billion people, of which 57 million people die, not everyone dies of a virus. Some people die from things that we would deem unusual. Like, for example, if someone fell and broke their hip and they're young, usually it's okay. But if they're over 50 years old, according to research, they have a 33% chance of dying within a year. From what? Falling and breaking their hip. Not a virus, not a car accident, just breaking their hip. And if they're older than 50 years old, they have now a 62.5% chance of dying within 3 months. From a hip, not a virus. There are 300,000 cases of broken hip in America alone every year. Meaning, 300,000 people potentially will die every year from breaking their hip. Now, this is not to cool people off in a sense and to just go out there in the open and just start hugging everyone. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, get yourself under control and understand the message and stop acting like a goy that has no God. Understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought this specific plague to the world for a reason. It's not for us to buy toilet paper. It's not for us to just, make videos of ourselves being hysterical. It's not for us to do nothing, play video games all day, or what the idiots in Italy are doing, which is they're giving the Italian people free subscription to pornography because they're stuck at home. So this pornography company is giving everyone free subscription. Hashem yishmor v'yatzil. My prediction when I saw this, I told a friend of mine, told him my prediction is going to be a lot more people die in Italy. So far I'm alright. If that was a stock, I would have invested in it. Why? HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates it, not for the Jews and for the non-Jews. He hates wasting seed. He hates people that are promiscuous. He hates pornography. He hates immorality. Now, it's important for us to know that when the Goyim see a plague of such nature, they really don't have much to rely on, because until now they relied on themselves. Last week's parasha, Parashat Ki Tisa, had a fantastic chidush that I got from a friend of mine, Talmid Chacham Adam Summer, Rabbi Adam Summer from Eretz Yisrael. Gave me a fantastic chidush. He says, look at it. Last week's parasha, pretty much last week was when everything hit the fan. Everybody started panicking to a higher extent. You saw the news said that the Pope was walking around the streets, roaming the streets, trying to bring hope to people, to something, praying or whatever he was doing. And he says that, look, in that same parasha we had an haftarah. And the haftarah talked about Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi, Zachur Letov, talks about how Eliyahu Navi spoke to Achav, the Rasha, who brought idolatry to Am Yisrael because he was married to a Goya. Izebel was a Goya, a Jewish king married to a Goya, Hashem yishmor. And after bringing famine to the world, Eliyahu Navi comes back and he says to the prophet Ovadia, who was working for Achav but secretly was a righteous person that was actually helping save many of the prophets, because Achav and his wife Izebel were killing all the prophets that they could find. So Ovadia was a tzaddik that Hashem made him into a prophet. He was hiding in the caves, 50 per cave, hundreds of prophets, hiding them in order to save them from this Rasha, from this king. And Eliyahu Navi comes to Ovadia and tells Ovadia, go tell Achav that I'm here. 3 years of famine, I'm here to meet. I know he wants to kill me. Tell him I'm here to meet, and bring all of his false prophets. Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Pikachu, his friends. Bring everybody. Bring all your idol worship. Let's see. We're going to do a showdown. They brought 450 prophets. 450 prophets they brought. And now all of Am Yisrael is looking what's going to be. Eliyahu Navi says, you bring a sacrifice to your God. I'll bring a sacrifice to the God of Israel, to our God. No fire of your own. You pray, you do whatever you need to do. If a fire consumes your sacrifice, then your God is the real God. So they started in the morning all the way to the afternoon. Hours and hours of time pass. No fire, no babkis. Yeshu's not coming, Mimach Shimo. Muhammad's not coming. Mustafa's not coming. Peter and Paul and James and Buddha. No one's coming. Even Pikachu took a day off. No one's coming. Now, Eliyahu Navi says, maybe you have to speak a little louder. Maybe your God is busy talking to somebody else. Maybe you can speak a little louder. Or maybe he's sleeping. Maybe your God's sleeping. So wake him up, maybe. Maybe he's tired. He starts messing with them. Why? It's a mitzvah to make fun of Avodah Zarah. It's a mitzvah from the Torah to make fun of idol worship. After all of this is done, everyone is losing their patience because they've been waiting for hours and nothing's happening. Eliyahu Navi, Zachur L'Tov, starts telling the people, take buckets of water and start pouring it on the sacrifice. Meaning, make it less flammable. Put buckets of water on this korban. Go ahead, more water, more water. And then he starts praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu at the time of Mincha, which is the reason why we learn that Mincha is the most critical prayer of the day. Even though Shachrit, the morning prayer, is the longest, Mincha is the most critical prayer of the day. And Eliyahu Navi brings the sacrifice and starts praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayigash Eliyahu Navi vayomar, Adonai Eloi Avraham, Yitzchak veYisrael, Ayom yivada ki ata Elohim בישראל ואני עבדך ובדבריך עשיתי את כל הדברים האלה. ענני אדוני ענני, וידעו העם הזה כי אתה אדוני אלוהים, ואתה סיבות את ליבם אחרונית. Eliyahu Navi, the prophet, says, Hashem, God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Israel, today it will become known that you are God of Israel, with Israel, and I am your servant, and at your word have I done all of these things. Answer me, Hashem, answer me. And let these people know that you are Hashem, the God, and you will turn their heart back. ותיפול אש אדוני ותאכל את העולה ואת העצים ואת האבנים ואת העפר ואת המים אשר בתעלה לכך. וירא כל העם ויפלו על פניהם ויאמרו אדוני הוא האלוהים, אדוני הוא האלוהים. A fire of Hashem descended and consumed the olah offering, the wood, the stones, the earth, and it licked the water in the trench. The entire people saw and fell on their faces and says, Hashem, He is the God, Hashem, He is the God. We see, Rabotai Yekarim, that here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes will put us up to the test, put us in a desperate situation where we have nothing to do. We have nothing to do but go to Him. And sometimes we think that we should go somewhere else. Christianity, Buddhism, stock market, business, all types of things that steer us away from Hashem. Which means that Hashem has to pick up the ante, make the difficulty more difficult, and put us in a situation where we admit Hashem Hu Elohim, Hashem Hu Elohim. God is the only God. God is the only God. That's Rabotai Yekarim, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. He doesn't want us to send crying videos and fake news to each other to scare each other's life just to stay in the house, or to close our synagogues, or to close the schools, or to act like crazy paranoid people. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants and expects from us is to admit that He is the only God and He is the only God. Now if that's not enough, my dear friend also said, look what else Eliyahu Navi said during this time. Look what else he says if you look at the book of Chronicles. In chapter 21, in verse number 12, it says, a letter came to him from Elijah, meaning this whole story that we just talked about is Eliyahu Navi. And Eliyahu Navi also had dealings with others, other kings, other people that were wicked. And another time Eliyahu Navi sent a letter saying, thus said Hashem, the God of your forefather David. He was talking to Yehoshaphat, who wasn't doing good things at the time. Because you did not follow the ways of your father Yehoshaphat, this is actually his son, and the ways of Asa, king of Judah, which was the grandfather, but you followed the ways of the kings of Israel, and you cause Yehuda and the inhabitants of Yerushalayim to go astray, as the house of Achav caused people to go astray, and you even murdered your brothers, your father's household, who were superior to you. Behold, Hashem is inflicting a great plague upon your people, and your sons and your wives and your wealth. You will suffer many diseases and intestinal illness until your innards will come out because of your illness year after year. See, here Eliyahu Navi gives us a different message. He says, when Hashem brings us a sign to do something, and we don't pay attention, Hashem has to make things worse. Now, sometimes the sign is a plague that scares the lights out of us, but in reality only kills 7,000 people. We're scared to death, but in reality, on the grand scheme of things, it's not killing more people than people that break their hip. On the other hand, Eliyahu Navi says, if you continue doing what you were doing in order to get yourself in this mess in the first plagues, things will get worse. I'll bring a different plague. I'll bring a plague that's going to destroy you. What kind of sin is this? He says, if you lead people astray, if you cause people to sin. When you cause Am Yisrael to sin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't stand it. This is the reason why we speak out against wicked people that call themselves rabbis or such. We have to speak out because they're literally murdering people. Now, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Eliyahu what to say, he didn't tell him to sugarcoat it and he didn't tell him to exaggerate it. He told him that when someone leads other people astray, they're going to get a plague that's much, much worse than whatever damage they got into this point. Right now, as we speak, there is a virus much worse than Corona in Brazil. You may have never heard of it, and most likely you haven't. And Bezrat Hashem you won't, other than the shiur. But even worse than all of this is what causes this virus. Because the same thing that caused the virus that we have today is what causes the much worse virus. The Iggeret HaRamban, the Vilna Gaon, it's impossible for us to understand his wisdom. When Rav Zalman, which was one of the Gedolei Ador, would study really long hours, was one time next to the Gaon Mivilna. And because he was so tired, he, in the middle of being there, he fell asleep a little bit. And his head went down, and the Gaon Mivilna put his hand under his head. And he slept for a few moments, but while he was sleeping, the Gaon Mivilna says, right now I have the entire Torah in my hand. That's how much Torah Rabbeinu Zalman had. But Rabbeinu Zalman himself, when they asked him, Gaon Mivilna, he says, what I achieved, he says himself, what I achieved in my later years, 70, 80 years old, the Gaon Mivilna already knew when he was 9 years old. Meaning, the genius of the Gaon Mivilna is not something for us to comprehend. He was like a Navi. But the greatest thing that you can see about the sages sometimes is how they communicated with their day-to-day stuff. Not just their books, but how they communicated their day-to-day. And one of the ways that we see it from the Gaon Mivilna's life is what he wrote to his wife when he was going to Eretz Yisrael. Now, there's a famous letter called the Iggeret HaRamban. And in this letter, he gives his wife instructions of what to do while he's gone. Now, I'm not going to read you the whole letter. I'm just going to read you something very interesting that he says. He says, I caution you to accustom yourself as much as possible to dwell alone. Because the sin of the misuse of the tongue is the most severe. As our sages of blessed memory said in Tosefta Masechet Peah, these are the things that man enjoys their fruits. And Lashon Hara is equivalent to all. And I don't have to elaborate on this, which is the most stringent of sins. He says to her, while I'm gone, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Don't even go to shul. Why? People, he later on says, don't go to shul. Why? Over there, the people are just speaking Lashon Hara. And if they're not speaking Lashon Hara, they're just speaking mundane talk. And people think that just Lashon Hara is bad. Because every other lecture is about Lashon Hara, Lashon Hara. No, forget about Lashon Hara. He says, even if you just waste your speech, talk about nothing, that's also bad. If you're going to go to shul, you're going to go to kollel, you're going to go and just chit-chat, better you don't go. Better you don't go. All man's toil is for his mouth. He says that everything, just like Shlomo HaMelech and the Ramban says, that all of his, everything is in his mouth. Everyone relies on his mouth. He quotes the Kohelet, he quotes Ecclesiastes, chapter 6, verse 7. It says, our sages of blessed memory said that all of man's mitzvot and teachings do not suffice to counterbalance what emerges from his mouth. Meaning, even if you keep Shabbat, and you keep kosher, and you keep Sukkot, and you have a nice little sukkah with little bells on it, and your Pesach matzah is the most kosher on the block, and your etrog is the most beautiful, and you're keeping all of the customs, great, that's all good. But if you're wasting your life talking about nothing, it's not going to be enough to counterbalance. Your good is not going to be enough to counterbalance the bad of wasting your time, wasting your speech. Needless to say, if your speech is Lashon Hara, if your speech is Lashon Hara, where you're saying bad stuff about people, which is rechilut, or you're saying things that other people don't, are not supposed to find out, because it's his private information, it's like saying, oh no, yeah, I think you should go to his house, I think he's pretty rich. Like telling somebody that someone else is rich is Lashon Hara. So, people that speak about other people, because they have nothing else to talk about, they don't realize that they're murdering themselves, not only by wasting words, but also by using speech that's illegal in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is what he's writing to his wife. This is a regular letter, handwritten letter. When you write handwritten letters, you write a letter to your wife, you don't worry about spelling errors and the things you're going to say. There's usually not that much thought on it. This is how we see the genius of the Gaon Mivilna and our sages when their regular conversation is this. And he says to her the following: what is man's vocation in the world? Meaning, what's the point of a person in this life? He should make himself silent like a mute. And one must seal his lips closed as tight as 2 millstones. A person should get themselves used to speaking less. Unless you're saying divrei Torah or things that are necessary for survival. Whether it be business, marriage, or educating your kids, a person has to contain themselves. Why? That's what the Ramban is trying to tell us 800 years ago. Too much is on the line. Now what does the Gaon say about what happens to such people if they ignore this? V'kol kafakela akol behevel piv shel dvarim betelim. He says the entire heavenly judgment, known as kafakela, is all centered around the breath cloud of meaningless words. And for each of those meaningless words, a person deserves to be slung from one end of the world to the other. You know, people always, oh, why don't you do a shiur? You did shiur about Genom, do shiur about Kafakela. We kind of did, but hey, don't worry about Kafakela so much. Why? If you're simply wasting your time talking about nothing, you're going to be there. You're going to get to know it firsthand. You're not going to need shiur. You're going to give us a shiur. That's, Rabotai, what the Ramban, what the Gemara, and what, needless to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to tell us when it says, V'dibarta bam. You spoke those words but not others. You spoke the words of Hashem and not words that are simply meaningless. Because when you speak meaningless words, you can get yourself in trouble by simply acting like a fool, crying on a video, or saying things that are a lie about your connection to Donald Trump, or simply just leading people astray by making them feel as if there's no God. Now, one thing you will notice, though, is this. When we speak hard words, we tell people about Chilul Shabbat, someone that violates Shabbat on purpose, the Rambam says, is considered an idol worshiper. The whole issue of idolatry in the weeks today, the whole issue of these fake rabbis teaching things that are against the Torah. What do we have? 500,000 comments. Oh, you're saying Lashon Hara. Oh, you're fanatic. Oh, it's too much. Right? But now, Corona arrives. All of a sudden, they're fanatic. Stay at home. Don't move. Buy toilet paper. Stay in a room. Don't even touch each other. Don't look at each other. If you can smell each other, you can already do that. Why are you so fanatic? Why are you so fanatic? 7,000 people died out of 200,000, out of 8 billion people in the world. Why are you so fanatic? You know why you're so fanatic? How come you're fanatic about this? You know why? Because you care about this. You care about your money, your house, your convenience, your this world. Where was your fanaticism when you found out that almost 80% of Am Yisrael are mechalalim Shabbat? Where was your tears? Where was your tears when you heard that almost 95% of American Jews use money on Shabbat, which means it includes some of the people that claim to keep Shabbat? Where was your fanaticism when you heard that almost 80% of Am Yisrael are marrying Goyim in America? Where? Where was your fanaticism? Where was the fanaticism when I was crying tears of crocodile 5 years ago trying to warn people that Goldberg and company was bringing an idol-worshipping missionary to the Keilah in Boca Raton? Where's your fanaticism? Where is the fanaticism when we cry every single day and we tell people stop building buildings and having more campaigns to cure some horses? Let's try to cure Am Yisrael. Where's the fanaticism? You want to be fanatic about Corona? No problem. At least be as fanatic about Am Yisrael. At least be as fanatic about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How come there's no fanatics about the Chilul Hashem that's happening in the world right now? All of these so-called leaders telling people just stay in the house as if there's no God. Everyone is so worried about their pocket, they forgot who gave them the money that's inside. How come you're so fanatic about Corona? How come you're not fanatic about your next door neighbor that's Mechalel Shabbat? How come you're not fanatic about helping the poor people in your neighborhood? How come you're not fanatic about your cousin that's marrying to a non-Jew? How come you're not fanatic about your entire class are going against Hashem on a regular basis with their gay parades? How come you're not fanatic about all the Chilul Hashem that's happening in practically every shul where no one knows how to shut up during the prayer? They go to the bait of Hashem, but they talk to each other about nonsense. How come you're not fanatic about that? Well, here's the hint. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a hint. He told us, when we say things that we're not supposed to, we get tzarat. That's what it says in the Torah. Why? The words that come out of our mouth, whether we like it or not, they affect other people. You tell other people something that this person doesn't want anyone to know about them, it's called Lashon Hara. You rip your friend in half by telling people, no, she's the worst person in the world, she's cheap, she's ugly, she's this, she's that. He cheats on his taxes, he cheats on his business, he does this. You tell people about this stuff. If it's not true, it's rechilut. If it's true, it's Lashon Hara. People are ripping each other to pieces in Bet Knesset, in the business world. They do business with each other, but that's not business. What is it? Yeah, give me the goods. They get the goods, but they don't give them the money. Oh, how come you're not paying? Oh no, I don't have it yet. I'll give you the money when I get it. What do you mean? But how come you didn't tell me that before you got the goods? You said you had the money. Yeah, I thought I did, but now I don't. Yeah, but I could have given it to somebody else. Or better yet, they so-called buy an aliyah at the Bet Knesset, but they never pay. Yom Kippur, they want to look like a superhero. Buy $15, $20, $30, $50,000. Yeah, I'm going to get the aliyah for Parnasah. Yom Kippur is over, Rosh Hashanah is over, Sukkot is over, Chanukah is over, everything is over. The guy still doesn't pay. How come you didn't pay? How come you're dishonest? Oh no, I thought I was going to have it. And this continues. I've been crying to you people for the last year or so about this epidemic we have in the Jewish business world called cash advance, merchant cash advance. Unfortunately, an industry full of crooks, many of them being Jewish and some of them consider themselves religious, who's simply a predatory industry that takes advantage of people by charging them unreasonable interest rates and unreasonable terms. How come nobody's crying about this? How come I'm the only one talking about it? Every rabbi I talk to, I say, no, so what do you think of this? He goes, yeah, it's horrible. Oh, thank you. I didn't really ask you if it's horrible. I already knew it's horrible. How come you're not talking about it? You know that there's a lot of Jews running this industry that call themselves religious. I'm not talking about the non-religious people. They're not going to listen to the rabbi. I'm talking about the religious ones. How come you're not fanatic about it? It's difficult. It's parnasa. Oh, it's parnasa. But coronavirus you're fanatic about. Coronavirus you're fanatic about. You tell everybody no matter what. Scare the lights out of people. Tell them to stay in the house. This is pikuach nefesh. What pikuach nefesh? What pikuach nefesh? I spoke to a doctor, an expert, someone that's very serious doctor, yesterday. He told me this. I actually told it to my wife. He said this. Asked, what do you think of this coronavirus? He says, I hope we just all get it so we can move on with our life. He says, surely there's going to be some people that die. But what's happening now and how people are reacting to it is much worse. It's much worse. Why? We're acting like there's no God running the world. We're not getting the message, Rabotai. And that's what I'm scared of. I'm scared if we don't get the message from this, the message will get stronger. Because what happens when we say things we're not supposed to, Hashem gives us tzarat, thrown out of the camp. For how long? 2 weeks, just like the quarantines are. 2 weeks, thrown out of the camp for Lashon Hara. But it's not guaranteed 2 weeks. It's minimum 2 weeks. Why is it not guaranteed? If you do tshuva, you come back after 2 weeks. You don't do tshuva, stay there forever. This nightmare can be a couple of weeks. If we actually start doing tshuva and become fanatic about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Start caring about each other to the point where we care that we keep mitzvot and not just make money. Start saying things that mean something to the keilah. Stop being a bet knesset full of people that don't keep Shabbat. There's no point of having a Beit Knesset without a shiur Torah. And there's no point of having a shiur Torah if the shiur Torah doesn't help people do Teshuva. The vast majority of places are just places people gather. Guys come to shul for 20 years, still mechalel Shabbat. What's the point of the place? It's better there's a quarantine, the place stays shut down, even after the quarantine. Such a place. It's time we become fanatic about the right thing. That's the message. The message is, Rabotai, is right now we're acting like animals. We're acting like scared animals that saw fire or smoke 3 miles down the road and we're running away already. Instead of realizing we can do something about it. We can do something about it. We collect our heads, start using our minds, each person analyze his own life. Okay, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing? Not just what you're doing right. You already know what you're doing right. And there's plenty of people telling you you're doing stuff right. Every place, every person, every community has to start analyzing what's going on. That's the cure. That's the cure. If your keilah has a bunch of people that don't keep Shabbat, that don't keep kashrut, that are intermarried, that are not learning Torah, guess what? All of those things are wrong. According to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, none of those people have Olam Haba. And whether you're Chabad, or you're Breslev, or you're Litvish, or you're Sephardi, or you're Ashkenazi, or you're whatever you are, it doesn't make a difference. If you don't keep Shabbat, there's no Olam Haba. If you don't put on tefillin every day, there's no Olam Haba. If you don't learn Torah, there's no Olam Haba. Well, you're not going to know how to be a Jew without learning Torah. If we start becoming fanatic about that stuff, guess what? Everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Without extra toilet paper. Without the extra granola bars. Without all the extra stuff, without extra money even. Instead of worrying about your next door neighbor and your cousin and your uncle and your friend and your parents and your son and your daughter that are going against Hashem, we're worrying about Corona. Now, again, like I told you, I'm not telling anyone to just go out and go against the law. If the law tells you you can't go to a certain place, don't go. There's no one's telling you to break the law. Because that would be Chilul Hashem also. But at the very least, use this time of quarantine, use this time of the world being on hold to reflect a little bit and start fixing stuff. Stop telling me that you want to fix yourself. Fix yourself. You don't need to tell me. You don't need permission from me. I'm nobody. Oh, Rabbi, yeah, I need to do this. You don't need to tell me, do it. You need guidance? Tell me, listen, I need to learn about this. Okay, I'll send you the shiurim. Or just go to my channel and search for yourself so I'm not Rabbi Google. 50 times a day people ask me to send them a shiurim about different topics. You can find it yourself. Go to Google, go to my YouTube page. There's a search box just for my channel. Type whatever word you want. You'll find whatever topic. Baruch Hashem, we have hundreds and hundreds of shiurim. We've spoken about a lot of topics. Just like you are asking me, I need to go search. What do you think? I remember every single shiur and every word I've ever said? Save me the time, have some mercy, find it yourself. But the point is, do something. Stop telling me you're going to do it. Stop telling your other rabbi you're going to do it. Stop telling your wife or your husband you're going to do it. Stop telling Hashem you're going to do it. Do it. Enough with the worry about shtuyot, about nonsense. Enough. Enough ripping each other off. Enough ripping each other apart. Enough wasting our time talking about this. Enough watching the news. The source of all Lashon Hara in the world is the news. Don't you realize that it's all Lashon Hara? All news is Lashon Hara. You're tainting your mind with Lashon Hara all day. And the Chachamim say that whether you're listening to Lashon Hara, or saying Lashon Hara, or believe Lashon Hara, you're a sinner. The Gaon Mivina is telling us there's an entire department in heaven called Kafakela, just designated for those people that waste their time talking about nothing. He's not exaggerating. He's not trying to get hits on YouTube. It's time we start addressing things like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to get us to address it. He puts you in a situation, it's uncomfortable. Okay, use that situation that's uncomfortable to do something that you weren't doing before. Why? Because you're in that situation because apparently you were doing something wrong, not because you're not lucky. Rabotai, it's time we act like Jews and not like Goyim that think that they can cure this virus. There's no cure that's going to come from a doctor that's going to help any one of us. The only cure is us doing tshuva. That has always been a cure since the beginning of time, and that will always be a cure. If we start taking things on ourselves, right now, every single person should be thinking, what am I going to take on myself as of today? Not tomorrow and not next week. What am I going to take on myself as of today? Now that I heard this message, what am I going to do about it? What will I start doing better? My Shabbat needs to get better. My learning Torah needs to get better. My kashrut needs to be better. My eyes need to get better. Stop looking at things that are inappropriate. My mouth needs to get better. My whatever. My business needs to get better. Something needs to get better. Everybody here, everybody that's watching, has to get better. That's the cure, Ribono Shel Olam. Why don't we get the message? Stop watching the news. They're not going to give you the cure. This is the cure. And I'm afraid that if you don't listen, then the damage will be much more than we can even handle. If we continue wasting our time giving purposeless messages to Am Yisrael just to make them worry about something we can't do anything about anyway, which will veer our attention away from the problem. The problem is here, the news, the media, the friends, the family, the associates are taking us over there. That's what's happening. You watch the news, you watch all these waste of life lectures that talk about absolutely nothing. Bill Gates from a few years ago, some TED talk that he had nothing else to do with his billions, so he decided to give a TED talk about how he said that there's going to be in the future, there's going to be a epidemic. And now people are calling him a prophet. You don't have to be a prophet. It happens every few years. It's no genius. Our Torah said it 1,000,000 times. We have, Rabotai, Ma'amar HaBitachon V'Itchaskut, which in Shomer Emurim, מובא מרבנו האריזל. The Arizal says שיש חס ושלום דבר בעיר, אין יכול לשלוט רק באלו שיש להם פחד. אבל באלו שמתחזקים בליבם ובביטחונם על השם ומתגברים על הפחד, אין שום דבר רע יכול לשלוט בהם. The Arizal הקדוש said a half a millennia ago, when there is a plague, that plague could only hurt people that are scared. But anyone that gets closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the mitzvot, with the Torah, with the bitachon in Hashem, with the emunah, and overcomes this fear, nothing bad will happen to them. As long as you watch the news and listen to crazy people, you will not be able to overcome this fear. In fact, you'll get more and more scared every day. You get more and more scared every day. Why? That's what media does. It sells based on fear. Even without the virus. As soon as the virus is over, guess what? They'll tell you about something else that's scary. a hurricane, a tsunami, a possible earthquake, the end of the world because of some volcano, recession, depression, starvation, overpopulation, UFOs, all types of things. Whatever they can do, because fear is what moves people. Psychologically, that's what works. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows it. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu instilled it in us to be scared. The problem is we're scared of the wrong thing. We're scared of everything but HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're scared of not having money. We're scared of having too much money. We're scared of having somebody. We're scared of not having somebody. We're scared of having kids. We're scared of not having kids. We're scared of the economy. We're scared of no economy. We're scared of getting a job. We're scared of having the job that we don't like. We're scared of food. We're scared of eating too much food or too little food. We're scared of the virus. We're scared we're the only one that's going to survive if there's a virus and everyone else dies. We're scared of having air. We're scared of not having air. I mean, it's so many things we're scared. We're scared of bugs. But then if there's no bugs, maybe there's something wrong. Like, we're scared of all types of shtuyot, but we're not scared of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have no problem sinning against Him. Going out with a non-Jewish boyfriend or girlfriend. Going to a non-kosher bar or party or wedding. Wearing a wig that's not kosher, longer than the exile. Wearing a dress or a skirt or a shirt that's not kosher. Going to a beach, going to a pub, a club. We're not scared about that. Being dishonest in business, we don't think twice. Stealing from people, he has enough, I could take it. Yelling at our spouses like there's some enemy, no problem. Why? She's my wife, she understands. We're not scared of saying Lashon Hara about each other. We're not scared of tearing each other apart. We're not scared of ruining reputations. We're not scared of destroying families. We're not scared of even killing somebody sometimes, or at least making them think we're going to kill them. We're not scared of any of that stuff. What are we scared? We're not scared of Hashem. We're not scared of anything. We do everything wrong. That's the problem. That's the problem. Rabotai, it's time we use that fear that we have for the right thing. There are 1.5 million places that you can find this plague, this epidemic in the Torah. This is no secret. In the last couple of weeks, there's been so many chachamim that found different secrets about this plague in the Torah that it's almost like Hashem wrote us this letter 1,000 times and we've been ignoring it, like it's junk mail. It's time we start taking things seriously. Instead of panicking like crazy people, and crying and pretending like we could do something about it physically. Let's stop, collect ourselves, realize the only cure that we have is doing tshuva. But tshuva is not just you yourself. Tshuva is your community. Tshuva is your keilah. Tshuva is the world. We have to start caring about each other because that's what got us out of the camp in the first place. We got thrown out of the camp because we said things that weren't appropriate about each other and about all types of people. About rabbis, about Talmidei Chachamim, about holy people, about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Hashem is throwing us out of the camp for a couple of weeks. Not to keep us out, not to kill us. If He wants to kill us, He has much better ways. But to give us enough time to reflect and do tshuva. To come back into camp completely renewed. With a new outlook, a new mindset, a new strategy. Where from now on I understand that when Shlomo HaMelech says, Tzedakah tatzil mimavet, I'm going to take it seriously. Shlomo HaMelech says, Tzedakah will save you from death. He didn't say it because he was collecting money for his kiruv organization. He was the richest man in the world. He was telling you what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him. You are in danger, you have to increase your tzedakah. You were giving $20, $30, $50 a week, now you got to give more. Why? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that's going to help him justify giving you life when your life is in danger. Yeah, but I already give myself. Okay, so give more. Oh, but I already give this, so give more. Oh, but it doesn't make a difference. This is a time you increase tzedakah. Secondly, stop being scared of the news and what's said on the news. Be scared of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Be scared of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one, it's the hand that controls all of this. No one else. Third, if you're going to be fanatic, you're only allowed to be fanatic about Hashem. If you're going to be fanatic about every little article, every little paper, every little beep that comes out of the stupid coronavirus, or anything that's related to it, whether it's the market effects or it's everything else, you better be as fanatic about Klal Yisrael. You better be as fanatic about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His Torah. You better be reading just as much Torah as you are about Corona. Because as long as there are Jews that look like Goyim among us, guess what? We are the wicked, not them. They're ignorant. They violate Shabbat because they're ignorant. When we don't do anything about it, we're the wicked ones. Don't think it's the secular people that broke Corona. It's the religious people that broke Corona. Why? We know better. Don't think it's the secular people that destroyed the Bet HaMikdash. It's the religious people that destroyed the Bet HaMikdash. Why? We know better. We were supposed to go tell them, stop doing wrong against Hashem, start keeping Shabbat. Stop studying Sports Illustrated, study the Chumash. Stop watching sports, watch the shiur Torah. Stop believing some rabbi is going to save you like your Christianity. Only you can save yourself with your own actions. We, the religious people, are obligated to do this. Don't think that you're okay if Mashiach comes tomorrow. Stop saying it. Mashiach now. What's going to happen to 80% of Am Yisrael if Mashiach comes now? Oh, you don't care, you're going to be saved? Guess what? Just for that attitude, you won't be saved. 80% of Am Yisrael, 80% of Hashem's children are going to be destroyed. And you want Mashiach to come? You should be praying for Hashem for Mashiach not to come. What, you don't care that 80% of his kids are going to be destroyed? Mashiach now alik. People need to start understanding if we don't do anything about Klal Yisrael, doing Teshuva, the situation will get worse for all of us. Corona is just simply a warning shot in the air. Hashem is trying to get our attention. Stop destroying each other for no reason. Stop focusing on your looks. Stop focusing on the dropping names. Stop all of this stuff. It's a time to do tshuva. Doesn't matter if you're a rabbi or you're a student or you're completely secular. You have to now, you're listening to this, you have to start taking something on yourself. You have to keep Shabbat. There's no half Shabbats, once a year Shabbat. Whoever told you that is simply mistaken. He was hoping you'd get the message, but he failed, or she failed. You have to keep Shabbat every week. You have to learn Torah every day. Doesn't have to be 10 hours a day, but you have to learn every day. You want to learn my shiurim every day? That's your limud Torah. At least start that way, no problem. But you have to do it every day. You have to learn in the morning, you have to learn at night. Whether you're a male or a female, you have to learn Torah. Without learning Torah, you're not going to know how to be a Jew. Stop pretending that there's going to be something else more important. There is nothing else. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to tell you. Right now, everything that was important to us, He's throwing it in the garbage. He's throwing it all in the garbage. Everything can be taken away in a second. If this continues, if we don't do anything, it's going to continue. And even without coronavirus being bad, even without coronavirus killing another person, we will be in a much worse situation than we've been in 2,000 years. Because the economy will go to a level worse than the Great Depression. Now don't go start praying for parnasa. That's not going to help either. Like I said, there are certain things each person needs to do. You have to give tzedakah. Whatever you're giving, you have to give more. Whatever learning Torah you're doing, you have to learn more. Whatever your difficult character traits are, you have to work on them. Pick one, start fixing it. You're an angry person, start working on your anger. You're a jealous person, start working on your jealousy. You're a stingy person, start working on your stingency. Fix those things. If you're single, find yourself a person, get married as soon as possible. It better be a Jew though. Why? It's not good for a person to be alone. Stop being so picky. It's not the shidduch crisis is nonsense. It's people are picky. They want malkat and melech hayofi, the princes of beauty, and rich, and smart, and this, and that, and compliment you. Pick someone, let's go, move on already. Love is something you build over time. There's no love at first sight for Am Yisrael. It's shtuyot, it's nonsense. Love is something you build over time. There's no feelings of love before marriage, and there's no understanding of love until you have kids. Rabotai, you have to start understanding HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us a warning. It's not Corona. It's not Corona that's the problem. It's us that's the problem. But Corona is the way that he's trying to get our attention. If we get the point, we'll be allowed back into the camp. All the projections of horrible things of the future can simply disappear just like that. Simply disappear just like that. If every single one of us that's watching this takes something on themselves, takes a serious mitzvah on themselves, or 2 or 3, and on top of that starts using their time, money, resources, ability, time, something to start helping Klal Yisrael. You got 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 more people, 5,000 more people doing kiruv in the world, doing something for kiruv, whether it be money or time or skill or something. Guess what? You're going to start seeing that spread, that kedusha spread much faster than Corona. That's what we have to do. That's the cure. But it starts with listening to our sages, which tell us that simply mundane speech can lead us to very bad places. That's what the Ramban is telling us 800 years ago. It's not just about Lashon Hara. It's not just about the obvious. It's even listening or talking about nonsense. Wasting our life doing nothing. If we simply took Hashem at His word, well, we see that He told us that He'll do certain things and we believe in Him, that's it. We'll take it seriously. Rabotai, there's no reason for anyone to be sad. Today, at my house, Baruch Hashem, there was no sadness. You know what we did at my house? And that's how we're going to finish the shiur. I'll tell you what we did at my house. At my house, Baruch Hashem, may it always continue, this is what we were doing. We're dancing around the house. Am Yisrael, don't be scared. Just do Teshuva. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.